How's it going, everybody? For the longest time, what I've been saying is that I wish you could see behind the scenes of Techvestor because everyone would understand that we know what we're doing and we're really, really good at it. And what I mean by that is I wish you could see the numbers behind the scenes of Techvestor, like how well we're actually performing, how well we're doing with all these properties. Because I'm the head of data for Techvestor, which means it's my job to figure out exactly what is going to be the absolute best thing for us to purchase and how to maximize the revenue of that property. And that means it's my job to ensure that we are actually performing really well with the properties that we are getting. And today we are finally able to share those numbers, which to me is like the most exciting thing ever, because now you guys get to see it. You get to see the actual proof. You get to see the numbers behind Techvestor. And I've brought in the CEO of Techvestor, Seif, who is actually going to be walking you through the data sheet. And we're going to be kind of just organically going back and forth, looking at the sheet. He's going to help you understand it. He's going to help you understand the numbers that we're looking at. And then we're actually going to go through some of the Techvestor properties so you can get a better understanding of what we're doing behind the scenes. And again, like I said, I'm so excited for this because so many people want to know these things, and now we're finally able to share it. So, Seif, without further ado, let's get into it. You want to introduce yourself, give yourself a little bit of background?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you, John. We're incredibly lucky to have John as our head of data, first and foremost. So I got to call that out. But we're super excited just to share our performance, our numbers. I know it's a common thing, people demystifying the space, but a little bit about us. We're one of the largest short-term rental funds around, especially for those who are looking to invest passively in Airbnb. So being able to disclose all this, share all this, and what we have is fantastic. And I know John feels the same way. Our team, our technology, our traction, our ability to dissect data, and our ability to go out and execute, I think is a testament to the numbers you're about to see. And we're excited that we've now, we're sent out over $2 million to people, right? That's a huge number that people are, it's meaningful. So
Yes.
it's really awesome to feel that. So without further ado, let's jump into it.
Yeah, and I just want real quick before we do jump into it, I just want to say that I think if I made millions of dollars doing anything else, I would still continue to work for Techvestor because one, I absolutely love the team, but there's nobody else doing things at this scale, in this size, in this way, and to be a part of that team and to be the head of one of those sections or divisions, it, to me is like one of the most greatest honors I could have for being a huge data nerd when it comes to Airbnb. And so, Seif, like I always say, I appreciate you having me on the team and willingly, keeping me around. I appreciate that. but
I can't
but
imagine a future without
yeah,
you.
man, let's get it. Let's get into the sheet and let's actually get into the numbers so we can stop waiting on that. So this is the sheet here, right? And we've got it set up where these are all of our different properties. So every single row you're looking at is a different property that we have purchased within the past 16 to 18 months or something along those lines, right? And then up top, what we have here are all the different columns explaining what each of these different columns mean. And I'm going to zoom up on this a little bit and let's see if walk you through end to end explaining everything that you guys are looking at. Okay. So we're now zoomed up and unfortunately I can't really scroll any further because it's frozen here, but why don't we just walk through this first line here so that people can very easily see it and you can explain it.
Yeah. So what you're looking at here is our first fund, our first propco is what it's called. And every single property, as John mentioned, is its own row. And each of these columns is going to be a certain metric that we track. So to kind of walk you through in column B here, where he has his launch date, is the day that that property went live and started accepting bookings or the first guest checked in. And then the second column where it says days live is how many days through the end of Q2. So we obviously have to report our numbers to our shareholders and our investors. So all this data is through the end of the second quarter of 2023. That's how many days this property has been live and operational. And then the next column, actual ADR, this is the average daily rate, aka the nightly rate that we were able to book this property for during this period, which is Q2 2023. The next column is going to be market ADR. This is what the market was charging on average for a comparable property. So in this example, you can actually see we were pricing below the market average, which was at the 79th percentile. And now before you say, well, why would you do that? Right? You'd have to keep looking at the equation. As John will always stress, it's about revenue and profitable revenue, not ADR or occupancy, which brings us to our next column, which is our actual occupancy. So this property had an 83% occupied quarter, right, during Q2. The average property in the market was occupied 60% of the quarter, which is this next column, which means we beat the market by almost 40%, 39% on occupancy. So in short, this property, we drove 39% more occupancy and we priced at the 79th percentile, right, as terms of our structure. Now, the main thing we want to look at here is like, was that the right choice to do? And really that output is revenue. So that's next column is our actual revenue. We drove right under $40,000 in in quarterly revenue for this property. And we underwrote the property with John's magical skills right around that $32,500 number. And the market was performing at 26,000, right? So then you look at that and you ask yourself, well, how did we do? So against our underwriting, we beat it by 23%, which is going to be this following column. And we beat the market average by 53%. So in short, our pricing strategy worked, right? Because we're optimizing for top line revenue. We want occupancy, we want reviews, we want ranking. Airbnb likes those things when we think about what a good performing property is going to be.
Before we continue on that, because it's going to kind of change up. So all these ones here connect together, right? And I just need to like stress how amazing these numbers are, right? Just this one scenario, and we have so many of these that we can go through, right? But just this one scenario where we purposely are a lower ADR than everybody else because we knew we could get better occupancy, and because of that, we knew we'd actually be able to make more than the market average, about 53% more than the market average, right? Which is, so when you first look at this, you're like, oh, you have a lower ADR than everybody. It's like, yeah, but we actually know how to make 53% more than everybody, right? So that's and I have to give credit here. This is not my doing whatsoever. This part here, this is all Mick and Austin and our revenue team, which is like some of the best there is out there, probably the best, right? So this is, to me, all of this right here is some of the coolest things possible to see. And one additional thing I want to just point out here is this is my column. All right, this is my column, right? Yeah, this is my column right here. So this is me right here predicting the possibilities of what I thought this property was going to make during this time frame. And then this is showing off how accurate I've been during that time frame. So for anyone who has followed me or knows my stuff or has gone through all these different things, this is all the proof that I've been dying to share with you guys to prove that I know what I'm doing, right? And I know how to conservatively predict how much a property is going to make. And so anyways, we can get into that a little bit longer, but I just wanted to point that one out because that one I'm super excited about. But anyways,
John's accuracies are very much on point for anyone who is listening. And he's a huge secret part of our team, right? Which is like the ability to buy and put together these portfolios, right? The other thing I want to mention is sometimes people see higher occupancy and they're like, well, maybe you're taking on shorter stays, right? You have more turns and less profitability. We are usually above the market average for length of stay, right, in any of our markets. So just kind of keep that in mind. It's just because we have higher occupancy does not mean we are necessarily having significant change in turns and profitability.
Yep, good point.
Yeah. So column O is our expenses, including our debt service. So in this example, for this property, we had $27,000 in expenses, right, on about $39,000 worth of revenue. And so the next column is going to be lifetime booked revenue. That means over the last 532 days that this property's been live, it's done $221,000 in booked revenue. We should be at $196,000, which is this next column, in order for us to keep with pace, which means we're pacing ahead by about 13%, according to this, right? Yep. And the cash flow this property spit off during the period in just Q2 was right under $12,000, which equates to roughly a 1.7% cash on cash dividend during the period.
Yep. So now that everybody understands the sheet and you understand everything that we're going through here, let's have a little bit more fun with this, because now we could actually just say, well, what property, like cash flow during this period, right? This is only a 3-month period. If I organize this from who's making the most to who's making the least, what you can see is we had one property that made $38,000 in cash flow in this one quarter, right? And do we want to pull up that property and actually go through it and take a look at it?
Yeah, let's go. Let's take a look at it.
Just to confirm, that's going to be it's going to be Wethersfield. So you can see this here. I've got to do it this way. So you can see this is our property here. It's a Scottsdale home. It's a 5-bedroom, 16 bath. This one, honestly, still to this day, this one actually surprises me that it's the highest cash flowing one. There's a variety of reasons. We actually we actually screwed up big time in this backyard, and I gave everyone shit for it for a while. And I was like, wait,
It got better though with time. We made some continuous improvements, and I think we even saw revenue pick up though, if I
we
recall.
we did, yeah, we did. And that's actually, so that's why I love this team, right? You know what I mean? We put it together, we put the property together in a certain way, and there was like, and I, I'm as anal as I could possibly be about these backyards and these properties, and I saw a bunch of flaws with certain things in the backyard. As an example, we only had like 6 chairs around this fire pit, and that drove me insane because we had, like 16 plus people that can sleep here. But as you can see, this is just an amenity filled, beautiful property. Like, Steve, what are your thoughts on this one when you look at it?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, right? Like, I think the thing that sells this property the most, and I just literally did a webinar today when I was talking about this specific property, is that cover photo, right? I
Yeah.
can't stress the importance of your key leading cover photo. Every single photo you've seen so far has been of the outside predominantly, but you look at that photo and you can see it's incredibly amenity filled. But here's what I tell people is, can you imagine yourself there? And the short answer is yes. Right. If I had a group of 6, 8, 10, or 15 people, I'm like, hell yeah, we can see ourselves there. In fact, fun fact, our team actually, we were there for an offsite. We rented out our own house and we were playing on that pickleball court right then and there, and using these same exact amenities. And when you're there, you're like, wow, this is incredible. You got mini golf, you got pickleball, you got basketball. People can sit around, people can hang around, have a drink, fire pit. There's the pool. There's
Yeah.
a covered dining area. There's ping pong, and inside the house is cool too. You can have people playing poker, people watching TV, people taking a nap, right? Whatever you wanted it to be. There's a lot of things that you can do here, especially relative to the price per head, right? So that a key part of our strategy in this market is being able to have a more economical price per head than the alternatives, and that works out really well for us in this market.
Yeah. And I want to also just kind of point out how this is a large part of our strategy, not only for the fund as a whole, but just to be able to continue to dominate in every market, regardless of the economic cycle, right? Because the way that we always view this is that properties are going to continue to get booked out. So even when the world shut down during COVID, people still traveled, right? And the thing is that, let's say there's 1,000 properties that people could potentially purchase, but there's only 100 people traveling. Well, we want to be one of those 100 homes that would get booked out of the potential 1,000 when people stop traveling. Because as we all know, there's cycles within the economy and it's going to happen. And so by having a property that is so enticing and offers so much more value in the terms of amenities of what people can do with the property, we have the confidence that we're actually going to be able to get booked throughout that entire time period. So anyways, that's my whole spiel on that and the way that I kind of view it, and why I think we're so heavily and strong on this. And we also know that it works extremely well because we made $38,000 in those 3 months just off of this one property. The next one that's actually right below it, if we change, which property made the highest as a percentage, it's actually this one here. It's a slightly less cash flow, but higher percentage, just slightly. And that property is actually going to be this one here, which still this is one that definitely blew my mind, right? This is one where there wasn't a ton of data. There wasn't a lot of homes this size. And when we were able to actually put it together, and the way we put this one together, this was, I think this was the first property where we kind of unlocked this new level of homes and the design and the features and the amenities and things like that. And the revenue from this one is clearly paying off, right? So I don't know. What are your thoughts on this one, Steve?
I think this was our first time bringing our element of design and technology and approach to a market that didn't have it. And it's because we saw this working out really well in Scottsdale, which was where that first property was.
Yeah.
And we brought it really to this market, which really hadn't seen that level of approach.
Yeah.
And we asked ourselves, like, can we test it? Can we try to add in? We didn't really go crazy. We were just like, let's just see how can we test it economically. But really, what I think another key advantage of this house is, and something we've come to appreciate a lot, is the physical bones. And sometimes how those physical bones are just so undervalued, right? Like, John, I know you love that area inside the pool, right? Where you're like sitting out, looking out. The design came out obviously fantastic on this home, but just the amenities on the inside, you can have your loungers, you can have your people sitting, and all that, all that space is, quote, as you describe it, filled in, right? And it feels like it's supposed to be there. It feels like it's cohesive. And I think when I look at some of our best performing homes, the word that I think about is cohesive,
Yes.
right? It's not even like well designed or well amenitized. It's cohesive. Like right things in the right places at the right time in the right corner,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it just tells a story, right?
Yep.
Um, and I think that shows in the ranking and the bookings and the revenue and what people's experiences are at these homes. So I think that's generally how I would think about that.
Yeah, we have to give the shout out to the design team and the ops team for being able to pull these properties together in the way that they do, right? Because you and I on this end, we're looking at like what amenities are going to be driving the most amount of revenue, right? Like, and we'll focus in, we'll be like, we got to get a pool table in there, right? Or we got to get this in there, and we kind of could just create this brief where we're like, okay, we need all of these things, right? And then we have this unreal team that then goes and just makes it look like this, right? It is something that like I couldn't even imagine if I tried to, but they nailed it, right? They not only they nailed the design, they added every single last thing that we needed within this property for it to have the competitive advantage over everybody else, right? And it's just like why wouldn't you want to book this home out, right? And that's kind of the way that it goes, right? Like why wouldn't you want to book this? You want to book it over everybody else, and it does get booked over everyone else. And bringing it back to the sheet, we can actually talk about the numbers again of how well it does, right? So you can actually see it's performing really well. Now, I'm assuming that there's some people out there that are going to be doubters who are saying something along the lines of, you're just looking at the top performers, right? So like, let's flip it around, right? Let's flip it around and go look at the worst performers so we can actually see the other end of the spectrum, right? And I think this is what excites me even more. Now, one thing I'm going to mention, see if you could obviously mention this as well. But the first thing you'll notice is over here. I want you to pay attention to this over here because a lot of these properties haven't been around long enough and they haven't had enough time to truly ramp up, right? So, and also, do you want to actually explain this a little bit better than probably I could?
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing we look at is we primarily buy larger homes, like 4 or 5 bedrooms, and typically that's going to sleep 8, 10, 15 people, right? And I don't know about you guys, John, or even you, is, have you ever tried to corral 15 people's schedules, right? It's
Right.
a
Yeah.
big deal. And so
Yeah.
what usually happens is those people have to book further in advance,
Yeah.
right? And when you book further in advance, and because we use dynamic pricing, you get significantly better premiums, right, for those bookings. That's actually a key part of our strategy as well. And these properties are not seasoned, right? In fact, if you look at that row 4, right, that property's been live 64 days, has probably not hit a high season, has not been around, and it's pacing decently well. It's a little bit below, right, in terms of lifetime where it should be 77%. When in contrast, look at the one underneath it. That property's been alive for 496 days. And you'd be like, well, it basically broke even this quarter, right? But it's actually pacing 30% ahead of where we actually need it to be. And this is the value of understanding where you are in the cycle of a home and what season you're in. The same thing with the one underneath it, right? 413 days live. If I saw something with 413 days live and it's pacing, 60% behind, I'm like, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But here we're actually pacing ahead. We're right on par with where we need to be. The one after that, right? It's only been live 53 days, right? And it's pacing 61% where we need to be. So I'm not really concerned there. It hasn't hit high season. It hasn't hit those peaks and valleys. And typically what we see is you want to see about 6 months of data for things to start averaging out. Because most markets are going to have typically a high season and at least a couple of shoulders, right? And you're going to get those blended in a 6-month average, right? And as you continue to see the one with 304 days live, that one's pacing ahead. If you see the one down below, that's 98 days live, that's also pacing ahead, right? So you get a little bit of both, but also this is such an advantage for our investors for the reason to invest in a diversified portfolio rather than an individual property, right? And I understand some people's needs and wants for control and like some other things, but we call it the STR ETF internally, right? It's just such a great portfolio of a singular type of asset.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And some other things I want to point out here as well is like really well said, by the way, perfectly said. Remember, this is the short-term rentals. There's seasonalities to this, so if it's not going through peak season, it's unlikely it's going to cash flow really well, right? However, we're in like 10 different markets with this fund alone. So we have a bunch of different peak seasons and low seasons and things like that. And then additionally, when you see, 97% or 98% or 96%, that's great, to be honest. Like, to me, I am so happy when I see that, because one, that means I almost perfectly predicted how much property was going to make. And we always buy properties based off of what I predict. If it does better, we're happy with that. That's great. We're almost setting a new standard for that market and what it's capable of doing. But based on the data that we had available, this is what we said it would make. And if we still bought it based off of those numbers, it was a good buy, is what we're trying to get across, right? So a 98% or a 96% or even like right at that 100%, those are all still great buys. Now, here's the other part, right? Yes, we have some properties that didn't cash flow, and then if we go the other way, we have properties that did cash flow a whole bunch, a ton. But the reality is what Steve just said. It's a blended average. You're getting a portfolio. So what matters is how well is the portfolio doing, and the portfolio as a whole is doing 2%, 2.02%, right? And so could you speak a little bit about that and what that number means and why that's such an important number?
Yeah. So in a portfolio basis, right, you're going to have properties that are going to do well in a quarter and some that aren't going to do well in a quarter, right? And we look at seasonality on a quarterly basis. So what this is telling you is in Q2, our average property, the 75 rows above, did spit off about a 2%, which is fantastic, right?
Yeah.
Especially given that Q2 has some of our it's one of our highest seasons, but most of our properties, a lot of them went live between Q1 and Q2. In fact, the bulk of this portfolio went live in the last 180 days. So it tells you that we haven't had an opportunity to actually season that yet. So to get that number with the opportunity to get better, right, over the next 2, 3, 4, 6 quarters, like, we're incredibly optimistic about where this portfolio is going, and we're really excited about that.
Yeah, look how many properties went live in just the last, what'd you say, 180 days? I think that's what I put in there. Look how many there are just during
Most
that
of
time
them.
frame. Right. So there's that ramp up. I mean, anyone who does short-term rentals understands the ramp up stage. Most people, if you don't do it, you don't understand it, right? But as you can see, a ton of our properties just went live. And again, like Steve was saying, we have bigger homes. There's groups of 15 people that are all getting together at the same time. Those trips are planned out further in advance. So we're still in ramp up stage and we're hitting the 2%, right? Which is awesome in my opinion. Now, see, if anyone can get this sheet, right? Anyone can use it. They can play around with it. They can review it. They can like analyze it however they want and break it down. So I'm going to link this sheet down below for anybody who wants to play around with it and to try and rip it apart. You know what I mean? And do whatever you want to do to try and make sense of it. So that you can actually play around with the Techvestor numbers. Like, that's like I said, it's the one thing that I wish we've been able to do for so long now, is to actually be able to show our numbers, because we're really good. We're really good at what we do. And I want to be able to show it off. And now we can. And this is the proof behind it.
It's a real world simulation, right?
Yeah.
It's as if you could pretend like you bought it and those types of things. And I know it doesn't have like markets or the specific properties here, but that's obviously to protect our existing investors and prospective investors who are also considering to invest with us.
Yeah.
But I can assure you that what we're doing, it's not rocket science, but we do have an incredible team. We have incredible technology. We obviously have the capital and the abilities to scale. But a lot of the stuff that John preaches here is this is living proof and evidence of those types of things as well.
Exactly. So for anybody who's watching this, we're going to wrap this up. I, again, am so happy that we finally were able to do this. And if you want to get the sheet, if you want to get the link, it's going to be directly below. Rip this apart, do whatever you want to do. We're happy to show off our numbers. But if you are interested in Techvestor, if you do want to invest passively, you can see right here, it says request your invite here. See if am I correct to say that people click this and they can then get a call. Yep. Call us. Get a call with us, talk with our IR team, our investor relations team. They'll walk you through how everything works. Do you want to explain that a little bit better for people, just so they understand what the process will be?
Yeah. So if you're interested in investing, you need to have to book your call there. So if John, actually, if you want to just click on that link, there's going to be a form. It's going to ask you if you're an accredited investor or not. We can only work with folks who are accredited according to regulations. If you click that request invite in the top right, and you're going to go ahead and pick a time, chat with our team, learn more, receive what we call our data room, including this performance, in depth, as well as our deck, videos with John and I, and other things are going to be in there. And if it's an investment that makes sense for you and your goals, we'd love to welcome you. And if it isn't, it's going to be really great education for you as well. At least we will hope so.
Now, I want to actually, you just so casually talked over one piece there, which is you're going to be able to see our data room, right? And the behind the scenes, there's a whole room of all of our information and all of our details and so many conversations with different people and getting to see behind Techvestor, right? Even more so than just seeing these numbers. But the reality is the numbers tell the vast majority of the story, right? But there's so much more that you could like learn about us before ever moving forward. And Steve just casually talked over it as if it was not that big of a deal, but it is a big deal because I've seen it and there's a lot to it. And so if you request this, you'll get access to that. And it's really important to, make sure you do your homework before investing. And that data room allows you to be able to do that. And so anyways, any last words you want to say here, Steve, before we hop off?
Thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing us to share, the Techfestor story and performance with your community. I'm sure hopefully they'll get some value out of it. And again, we're very lucky to have you, John. So thanks for taking the ride with us.
Of course, man. I appreciate you having me on the team. It was like one of the best things that's happened to me. So I appreciate it. I get to hone in my skills every single day and then prove to people I know what the hell I'm doing. Right. So
clearly it's working.
It's working. Exactly. Imagine if it wasn't working, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So all right. I appreciate it, Steve, and see you later, everybody.